My wife teamed up with my bully sister to fix our relationship spoiler. It backfired. I know him better than he knows himself. My wife texted the woman who fractured my cheekbone. They expected a tearful reunion, but as a family law solicitor, I deal in facts, not emotions. I looked at the witnesses, smiled calmly, and triggered a sequence of events they never saw coming. I'm a family law solicitor. Have been for 11 years. My whole career is built on understanding exactly when someone's behavior crosses a line legally, emotionally, practically. I don't get rattled in rooms. I don't raise my voice in arguments. I build cases. I document. I wait for the right moment, and then I present the facts clearly and let them do the work. That's not a personality trait. It's a decision I made at 20 years old, 2 years after the last time I saw my sister Lisa. I passed my bar exam the same month Lisa was released from her second court-ordered psychiatric evaluation. I didn't send a card. I'm mid-30s now. Married 4 years. No kids yet. By most measures, a functional adult who built something decent from a start that wasn't. And I did that, in large part, by keeping a very clear line between my present life and the family I grew up in. Lisa is the oldest of 3. She was always the favorite openly, unapologetically, in the way that some families don't even bother trying to hide. My parents had an unspoken system. Lisa's behavior was always explained, and everyone else's consequences were always enforced. From the time I was about 12 until I was 17, she ran a targeted, sustained campaign against me that my parents either didn't see or chose not to address. I won't go into the full history here. What I'll tell you is that our parents had a phrase they reached for every single time things got bad. Mental health issues. Whatever Lisa did, however bad it got, however many times it escalated, the explanation was always the same. She's struggling. She's in a difficult place. You need to be patient with her. That phrase became a kind of all-purpose absolution in our household. It meant the conversation was over before it started. The last time I saw her, the neighbors called the police. Lisa received a formal caution and was court-ordered for psychiatric assessment. There is a police report. There are hospital records. The phrase pattern of escalating interpersonal aggression appears in the evaluation summary. I know, because I have a copy. None of that stopped my parents from forgiving her by Christmas. I was still in physio. I cut contact not long after. I didn't explain it to that family at length. I didn't feel I owed them an explanation. I still don't. Nadia was the first person I ever told the full story to. All of it, the records, the timeline, the details I hadn't said out loud to anyone. She cried. She told me she believed every word. She looked at me and said, clearly and without hesitation, I will always respect your boundaries. I would never push you towards something you don't want. I believed her completely. That was 4 years ago. I should have kept a copy of that conversation too. It was a Wednesday evening. I'd been home for about an hour, and I was starting dinner, nothing complicated, just pasta, water already boiling on the stove. Nadia had left her phone on the kitchen counter when she went to change out of her work clothes. My phone and hers are the same model. Same case color too, because we bought them together. I picked it up without thinking. The notification was already on the lock screen. I didn't unlock the phone. I didn't need to. It was a message from a contact saved as L. Just the letter. 1 character. And the message read, roughly, he still doesn't know, right? Keep it that way until the pub. I set the phone back down exactly where it was. I turned back to the stove. The water was still boiling. I stood there for 11 minutes. I know because I checked the clock when I finally moved, and I did not do anything dramatic. I didn't pick the phone back up. I didn't go find Nadia. I just stood there and let the information settle. 1 letter. Not a name. A deliberate choice to make the contact harder to identify at a glance. You don't save someone as a single initial by accident. You do it because you're aware, on some level, that you're hiding something. I served dinner like nothing happened. Nadia came back, we ate, we talked about her day. I was pleasant. I asked follow-up questions. At no point did I mention what I had seen. That night, after she went to bed, I called my therapist, Dr. Renata Voss. I've been seeing her for 6 years. I told her that an unexpected contact situation was about to occur and that I needed to think through how I wanted to handle it. She told me to document everything before and after. She said to be clear with myself about what outcome I was actually looking for, not what I was hoping for, but what I was actually prepared to accept. That was the most useful thing anyone said to me all week. I went to my home office, opened my laptop, and started a new file. I assigned it a case reference number, the same way I would any matter that came across my desk at work. I wrote the date at the top. I printed the phone account terms and conditions and confirmed that, as a joint account holder, the message logs were technically accessible to me. I didn't access them. I didn't need to yet. I just needed to know that I could. I put a yellow sticky note on the folder cover with the reference number. Then I went to bed. She thought she had 3 more days before I found out. I'd already started the file. The next evening, Nadia brought it up over dinner. I had made shepherd's pie from scratch that afternoon. Proper 1 mince, vegetables, mashed potato on top. I remember that specifically because I'd spent about an hour on it, and the domesticity of the whole thing made what happened next feel even more surreal. We sat down. She poured 2 glasses of water. She looked at me with the kind of careful expression people wear when they've been rehearsing something, and she said she had a surprise for me. Something she'd been putting together because she loves me, and she'd been worried about me, carrying so much alone. She said Lisa had been doing a lot of work on her mental health issues, that she was in a really different place now, that she genuinely wanted to make amends, and that Nadia had arranged for us to meet just a small group, low pressure, at the Anchor on Tuesday night. Both phrases in the same sentence. Mental health issues. Make amends. I recognized them immediately as Lisa's language, scripted and handed to my wife to deliver across a dinner table I had cooked. I asked one question. Calmly. How long have you been in contact with her? Nadia said just a few weeks. I looked at her. I said, okay. And then I finished my shepherd's pie. 4 months of texts had already saved themselves to the cloud. I didn't correct her. I just noted it the way you note a discrepancy in a witness statement, and I filed it away. The following evening was Tuesday. The Anchor is a pub our friends use most Fridays. Familiar enough that it was probably chosen on purpose neutral territory, but tilted. When we walked in, Lisa was already there. So was my mother, Colette, and a man named Derek Hargrove, a family friend of about 30 years standing, whose name had not appeared anywhere on Nadia's description of tonight's guest list. I clocked that immediately. You don't add a long-standing family friend to a quiet reconciliation dinner unless you want witnesses. Witnesses who already like the other side. They had chosen a round table in the middle of the room. Not a booth. Not a quiet corner. The most visible spot in the place. 5 chairs. 5 people, with the empty one positioned directly across from Lisa. The fruit machine flickered in the corner. The place smelled like warm beer and carpet cleaner. I took all of it in and thought, this is a well-staged room. Lisa stood up when she saw me. She looked composed, well-dressed, completely at ease. Before I could sit down, she began. She said she had been doing a lot of work on her mental health issues. That she was finally in a place where she could genuinely make amends. She looked at me directly, steady and rehearsed. Her psychiatric evaluations described this exact behavior as her primary adaptive response under stress, performing emotional literacy she doesn't actually have. Then she reached into a small bag and slid an envelope across the table toward me. 2 pages, printed on personal stationery. A written apology. She'd come prepared. My mother wiped her eye. Derek nodded slowly. Nadia squeezed my arm. I let Lisa finish. I looked at the envelope but did not pick it up. Then I said, in the same tone I use when I'm about to take a deposition, before anyone continues, I have some questions. The table went quiet. Nobody had expected that. The chair across from Lisa had my name on it in every way that counted. I had absolutely no intention of staying in it. I asked Lisa one question. Simple, direct, no preamble. Can you describe in your own words what happened in November? The year I was 17. She was ready for a lot of things that evening. She wasn't ready for that. She started slowly. She said she had been going through a very difficult time back then, that she had acted out in ways she deeply regretted, that she had caused pain she wished she could undo. It was smooth. It was measured. And it contained absolutely no description of what she actually did. Not a single specific. Not the kitchen. Not the police. Not the 12 stitches. She spoke for nearly 2 minutes and said nothing of substance. When I asked her to be more specific, what did you do, Lisa? Specifically, my mother cut in before she could answer. We don't need to relitigate the past, Colette said. That's not what tonight is about. Nadia nodded. She said the whole point of tonight was to move forward, that going back over every detail wasn't going to help anyone heal. I looked at both of them. Then I said, very quietly, I'd like to hear her say it. Nobody did. Lisa slid the envelope a little closer to me, as if the letter might substitute for the words. I looked at it. The written apology used the phrase "the incident in November" exactly once. One euphemism for a police report, a hospital admission, and 6 weeks of physio. That's what 12 stitches and a fractured cheekbone were called now. The silence held. Lisa looked down at the table. Colette turned slightly toward the window. Nobody was meeting my eyes. I gave it another few seconds, and then I turned to Nadia. I said one thing. 4 months. Just those 2 words. She understood immediately. I watched the realization move across her face. Not shock exactly, more like the expression of someone who has been caught mid-performance and knows the curtain just came down. She didn't deny it. She went straight to justification. She said she had done it because she loved me. Because watching me carry this isolation had been painful for her. Because she genuinely believed, after talking with Lisa, that something had changed. And then she said she believed my boundaries had become walls and that walls weren't healthy for anyone. There it was. My word, in her mouth, inverted. Boundaries, the thing she had promised to respect 4 years ago, clearly and without hesitation reframed now as the problem. I said, "You went behind my back to someone I have a police record against. You used the word love as the reason. I want you to understand that I'm going to remember both of those things." Nadia's eyes went red. Colette had stopped crying. Derek was very still, both hands flat on the table, pint glass untouched. I noticed that. I filed it away. Then Colette found her voice again. She said I was being too sensitive. That I had always had a way of making myself the victim. That whatever happened between Lisa and me was a long time ago, and that holding on to it wasn't doing my mental health any good. Derek, attempting to smooth things over, added that everyone struggles with mental health issues at some point in their lives, and that forgiveness was really about freeing yourself, not the other person. I counted, quietly. That was the 4th time the phrase mental health issues had been used in under 40 minutes. Every single time, it functioned the same way, not as an acknowledgement of what Lisa did, but as a solvent. Something to dissolve her accountability before anyone could look at it directly. I reached into my bag. I placed the folder on the table. I did not open it. Nobody asked what was in it. That told me everything I needed to know about how much they already suspected. I opened the folder. The yellow sticky note on the cover had a case reference number written in black pen. I had assigned it myself, 3 days ago, in my home office at 11 at night. Same system I use at work. I peeled it off and set it to one side. Then I talked the table through what was inside. I did it the way I would introduce exhibits to a client. No drama. Just an itemized account of what existed and what it documented. First, a hospital admission record. My name, my age at the time, 17, the date in November, the presenting injuries, the treatment received. Second, the police report filed by the responding officers who came to the house that night, called by a neighbor because nobody in my family made that call. Third, the psychiatric assessment ordered by the court following Lisa's formal caution. Fourth, 2 letters Lisa had sent me in the years since, different years, different return addresses, different handwriting styles. I had read each one. I had kept both without responding. Both used language just as vague as the envelope she had slid across the table tonight. No specifics, no named actions. Just variations on deeply regret and difficult time and hope you can find it in your heart. Tonight was not the first time Lisa had attempted this particular performance. It was just the first time she had recruited help to stage it. Fifth, a printed copy of the text message thread between Nadia and Lisa, obtained from the joint account we share. I had highlighted 4 specific messages in yellow before I left the house. Nobody spoke while I went through the list. Lisa's hands were in her lap. Colette was looking at the folder like it had been placed in front of her in a language she couldn't read. I picked up the text thread printout. I didn't slide it to the center of the table. I slid it directly to Nadia. Then I read 2 of the 4 highlighted messages aloud. The first was from 4 months and 3 days ago. It was sent by Nadia. In it, she described my emotional state in terms she could only have known from private conversations between the 2 of us, things I had told her in confidence, things I had told no one else. She had taken those details and used them to open a negotiation with my sister. The second was from the week before tonight. Nadia had written, "He'll come around once he sees her in person. I know him." I set the printout down. I said, "I want to be clear that I'm not angry. I'm establishing a record." Colette started to say something. I said, without looking up, "I'm not finished." The timestamp on the oldest message was 4 months and 3 days before tonight. I stated that out loud. Nadia did not look at the printout. She looked at the table. Then she said, very quietly, I was trying to help. I said, equally quietly, I know. I know. That was the worst part. I took the hospital admission record from the folder and placed it flat in the center of the table. Not in front of Lisa. Not in front of Colette. In the middle, where everyone could see it. I didn't read from it. I just said, 12 stitches. Fractured left cheekbone. Recorded as a domestic assault. Lisa received a formal caution and was court-ordered for psychiatric evaluation. This is the event that Colette just referred to as relitigating the past. Then I picked up the one-page psychiatric evaluation summary and read one line from it aloud. Slowly. Pattern of escalating interpersonal aggression. Nobody said anything. Derek reached across the table and picked up the hospital record. He held it in both hands and read it. He read the whole page. It took him about a minute. When he set it down, he didn't look at Lisa. He didn't look at me. He looked at Colette. He said, I didn't know about any of this. Colette said nothing. He said, you told me it was a fight. You said it was mutual. She still said nothing. Derek put his pint glass down. He didn't pick it up again. Colette looked at the table. Lisa looked at her hands. Nadia looked at me. The silence lasted long enough that the fruit machine in the corner cycled through its idle animation twice. Nobody moved to fill it. So I did. I looked at Lisa. Not at Colette. Not at Nadia. At Lisa. I said, I want to be clear about why I'm here tonight. I didn't come to reconcile. I didn't come to make amends, or watch anyone else make amends, or participate in whatever this evening was designed to produce. I came because I needed this conversation to happen in front of people who cannot later claim they didn't hear it clearly. I paused. Then I said, I don't want a relationship with you. I don't want an apology letter I have to interpret. What I want, the only thing I have ever wanted from you, in 17 years, is acknowledgement from you, in this room, in front of these people, of what you actually did. Lisa opened her mouth. I held up one hand. Not a difficult time. Not acted out. Not the incident in November. What you did. Specifically, out loud. That was the first time in my adult life I had said that directly to her. Every year of distance, every unreturned letter, every boundary I had maintained, none of it had ever included this. I had simply stayed away without requiring anything from her in return. Tonight was different. Tonight I needed it witnessed, because I had learned the hard way that things said only in private get renegotiated later. I needed it on record, in a room with 4 other people, so that not one of them could go home and tell a different version of events. I had known, when I built that folder 3 days ago, that there were 2 possible outcomes. Either Lisa would say it clearly, specifically, in front of witnesses, or she wouldn't. And if she wouldn't, then I would leave with something more useful than an apology anyway. In my bag, underneath the folder, there was a second document. A formal letter, drafted on my firm's headed paper, addressed to Lisa. It stated that any further attempts to initiate contact directly, or through third parties, including but not limited to my spouse, would be treated as harassment and dealt with accordingly. I had drafted it the night after I found the notification on Nadia's phone. I had not sent it. I had printed it, folded it, and put it in my bag that morning. If tonight ended in denial or dismissal, the letter would go out by email before I reached the end of the road outside. I had also, in the 3 days since Wednesday, arrived at a clear position on my marriage. I did not dramatize this to myself. I simply acknowledged it the way I would acknowledge any known variable in a case. If Nadia could not understand, after tonight, why, what she had done was not love, but a unilateral decision to override a boundary. I had stated plainly and repeatedly, then we had a problem that one difficult evening could not resolve. I had accepted that possibility before I got out of the car. The letter was already drafted. All I had to do was press send. Nobody at the table said anything for a moment. The pub carried on around us, low voices from the bar, the faint sound of a television in another room. Normal Tuesday evening. I sat with that for a few seconds. Then Derek cleared his throat. He wasn't looking at Lisa or at Colette when he spoke. He was looking at no one in particular, the way a person looks when they're saying something out loud that they've only just finished thinking through. He said, I didn't know it was a formal caution. I didn't know there was a court order. He turned to Colette. You told me it was a rough patch. A family argument that got out of hand. You said it was mutual. Colette didn't answer. Derek said, that's not what's in that document. He picked up his pint glass. Then he set it back down without drinking. He sat back in his chair and said nothing else. He didn't need to. He wasn't angry. He wasn't performing solidarity. He was simply a man of 30 years' acquaintance with this family who had just quietly, publicly, revised his position. And in doing so, he became the first person at that table who was not running someone else's script. I noted it. I didn't gloat. I just noted it and moved on. Lisa was quiet for a long moment after I finished speaking. The table waited. I waited. Then she began again. But this time it was different. The composure from earlier, the rehearsed stillness, the steady eye contact was gone. What replaced it was something more familiar. She said the psychiatric assessment had been taken out of context. That she had been in crisis at the time. That the doctors who evaluated her hadn't understood the full picture, hadn't known the family dynamics, hadn't known what she was dealing with. She said that her mental health issues were more complicated than any single document could capture, and that reducing 17 years of her life to a police report wasn't fair to anyone. I let her finish. Then I said, "That's your answer to a formal caution and a court order?" She said I was still punishing her. That I had been punishing her for 17 years by refusing to let her fix things. That my no contact was itself a form of cruelty because it had denied her the chance to make amends. I said, "I stopped being involved with you 17 years ago. Tonight is the first time I have addressed it directly. You can't be punished by someone who already left the room." She had nothing to follow that with. She looked at Colette. Colette looked at me. Then Colette spoke. She said I was tearing the family apart. That I had always had a way of making everything about myself. That my refusal to move on was damaging everyone around me. That a family couldn't function when one member decided to hold the rest of it hostage to a grudge. I said, "I left this family apart. I didn't tear anything. You did." She said she had been protecting me. That she hadn't wanted to make a bigger deal of what happened because it would have caused more damage, more trauma, more disruption. That she had made a judgment call and she had made it for good reasons. I said, "Protecting me from what, exactly? The investigation? The formal caution she received? The court order?" I looked at her steadily. "Or protecting her from the consequences of what she did?" Colette had no answer. She reached across the table and took Lisa's hand instead. I looked at that for a moment. One gesture. 30 years of dynamic expressed without a single word. Lisa was never in that family without a hand to hold. From the time I was 12 years old, there had been a hand for her and not one for me. Some things don't need a document to prove. They just need a witness. Derek was that witness tonight. He was sitting very still, watching Colette hold Lisa's hand, and his expression was the expression of a man doing a slow, private arithmetic. Nadia had not spoken since the text messages. She had been sitting with both hands in her lap, not quite looking at anyone directly. When the table went quiet again, she said, in a voice that was smaller than I had ever heard from her, "I didn't know it was this bad." I looked at her for a long moment. This was the closest I came all evening to saying something I hadn't planned. Because the honest answer wasn't anger. It wasn't contempt. It was something quieter and more specific than either of those things, the particular exhaustion of a person who told the truth completely, once, to someone they trusted completely, and then watched that truth get quietly filed away and overruled. I said, "I told you it was this bad. The first night I told you everything, I gave you the hospital record to read. You held it in your hands." She didn't respond. I said, "The problem isn't that you didn't know. The problem is that you decided your judgment about what was good for me was more reliable than mine." Her eyes filled. She reached across the table toward my hand. I stood up. I straightened my jacket. I picked up the folder. I looked around the table once, Colette, Derek, Lisa, Nadia, and then I looked at Lisa specifically. I said, "I came here tonight so that this acknowledgement or this refusal to give it would happen in front of witnesses. I've said what I came to say. I have what I need either way." I put the folder in my bag. The envelope with Lisa's apology letter was still on the table where she had placed it 2 hours ago. I hadn't touched it once. I left it there. She could take it home. The bar staff could throw it away. Either way, it was hers now. It had always been hers. I looked at Derek. I said, "Thank you for reading it." He gave a single nod. I didn't say goodbye to Colette. I didn't say anything to Nadia inside the pub. I walked between the tables toward the door, past the fruit machine, past the bar, and out into the car park. It was still raining. I got in the car, opened my phone, and pulled up the email I had drafted 3 days ago. The email was already written. I had drafted it 3 days ago, the night after the notification on the lock screen, in the same sitting where I had started the folder. It was addressed from my firm, formal header, formal language, my professional signature at the bottom. It stated, clearly and without elaboration, that any further attempts by Lisa to initiate contact with me directly or through third parties, including but not limited to my spouse, would be treated as harassment and handled accordingly. I had CC'd Dr. Renata Voss as a record holder. I read it through once in the car park. Then I pressed send. The outbox timestamp read 9:47 p.m. I know because I checked it before I started the engine. I remember thinking that was a reasonable time for a Tuesday. Then I drove home. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel relieved, exactly. The word I kept coming back to was accurate. The situation was now correctly labeled. It had a document attached to it. That was all I had ever wanted from any of this, not victory, not punishment, just an accurate record of what had happened and what I was no longer willing to accept. The boundaries were now in writing. That felt right. Nadia came home about 2 hours later. We sat in the kitchen and we talked for a long time. I'm not going to relay that conversation in full, because some of it is still unresolved and I don't have the distance from it yet to be fair to either of us. What I will say is this, she cried. She admitted, without being prompted, that she had misrepresented how long the contact with Lisa had been going on. And at one point, in the middle of a long and difficult explanation, she stopped and said, "I thought I knew better." She didn't say it as an excuse. She said it as a confession. And it was, without question, the most honest thing anyone said all night. I told her that honesty was the only thing I had ever been asking for from anyone in that pub. I meant it. I also told her that being betrayed by someone you trust is a specific kind of damage. It's different from being hurt by someone you already know is capable of hurting you. I had spent 17 years managing the damage Lisa did. What I hadn't expected, what I was still working out how to carry, was finding out that the person I had trusted with the full weight of that history had quietly decided her version of my recovery was more important than mine. We haven't resolved everything. I don't know yet what the full cost of this is going to be. But I know that I am not going back to pretending the folder doesn't exist. I know that I am not going to explain myself again to people who have already decided what they want to believe. And I know that for the first time in 17 years, the record is straight. The next morning, my phone showed one new message. It was from Derek. It said, "I'm sorry. I should have asked more questions a long time ago." I replied with 2 letters. "Yeah. I haven't heard from Lisa. I haven't heard from Colette. I don't expect to. The folder is still on my desk. I haven't put it away yet. I'm not sure I need to."